Good morning. This is a response to a video by dewinthemorning called Ephilism, question mark, question mark, question mark, get out of town, get out of town, exclamation mark. Hi there. Thanks for the very articulate video. It's always embarrassing watching someone whose second language is English be as articulate as you are, because obviously English is my first language and my articulacy fails regularly. Let's have a go anyway. Talk a little bit about Jacques Monod there. I don't know Jacques Monod's work that well, but I know he would certainly agree with with at least some of the premises that Ephilism seems to come with, if it's a coherent enough philosophy to have those kind of things established yet. Certainly to the idea that we're alone in the in a vast meaningless universe and not significant in any way. I think he would agree with that. He's as a kind of atheist. I think he comes from a religious family, but I think he was an atheist and driven to atheism at least partly by the findings of evolutionary biology and by his own realization about the unlikeliness of life happening, a kind of cosmic chemical joke, and the ultimate meaningless of all that. So he wasn't depressed or anything like that, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, I think he would. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about Jacques Monod. I'm just jumping in at random here. Striving to achieve things. One of the things you say is like one of the qualities of the good life. One of the things that we're worth living for is the fact that we are capable of not wallowing in self-pity, but acquiring a state where we strive to achieve things. And I can kind of see what you mean by that. Sometimes striving is pleasurable, but sometimes it frankly isn't. And following the line of Jacques Monod, achievement is ultimately local and contingent and doesn't really have the great weight in the universe that we often feel that it does. So that striving is in of itself not necessarily doesn't necessarily have the value that we feel it does, and to the extent that we do feel value, it is part of our sentience, our feeling system, isn't it? That I don't know why would if we're trying to be as objective as possible, if we're trying to take a detached viewpoint on the human condition and the sentient condition more generally, I'm not sure if we would look at striving to achieve anything really, striving to achieve happiness. I'm not sure if we'd look at the striving as necessarily a positive thing. Okay. Then you talk about poop. I thought this was a really good thing, because you talked about just some of the characteristics of Ephilism. You say one of the characteristics of Ephilism is apparently looking out at the world as if it's this kind of dirty, disgusting place, as well as the other things that you've already spoken about. And it's just full of decay. I'm not sure that really captures the viewpoint, but let's just go with that for the minute. And then you talk about poop, or blood, menstrual blood you mentioned, pus, snot, the more abject aspects of the human condition. And you say, well, these things have been, the reason we find these things abject, the reason that we find ourselves disgusted by these things is because evolution has provided that for us. Those of our ancestors who weren't disgusted by getting your hands in shit, those of our ancestors died off because they got E. coli poisoning and contaminations and died. So our feelings of disgust are evolution's answer to that problem, if I can characterise evolution in that way. And so we find these things disgusting for good evolutionary reasons. And I think that's probably true, I've no doubt that's true. But what does that mean? That means that evolution has, and again I'm anthropomorphizing rather, but evolution, it either kills you if you mess around with the wrong stuff, or it surrounds you with things that frighten you or disgust you. There's no we are going to be in the presence, because of the way that the human form works and biological systems work, they do produce things like blood and semen and snot and brain matter and all this stuff. And towards the end of their lives, they do decay and bits fall off them and they suppurate and all these kind of things. So that's going to happen whether we want it to or not. And evolution has decided that, you know, as I said, it either kills you or it disgusts you. There isn't an alternative. You know, that's the way it's done things, which is interesting. Then you go on a little bit about talk about some people seeing the world in dark colour. Yeah, you do a little bit about the psychology of people who you would characterise as ethelists, and say, well, it's just a different way of looking at the world. And you're probably right. Yeah, some people do see the world in dark colours, and some see it in bright colours. I tend to be one of those people that you mentioned who sees the world in bright colours. I tend to be pretty optimistic, not all the time, but for whatever reason, I guess down to that D4DR gene, I don't seem to be cursed with depression, so I'm grateful for that. But I recognise that's just the way I see the world. You know, it's not that some see the world in dark colours and some see it correctly, is it? I mean, I'm sure you're not saying that. Some see the world in dark colours, some see it in bright colours. That seems to be, because of this D4DR as you cite, or perhaps for other reasons, that seems to be, again, part of our evolutionary programming. Great. Okay, so you're saying that basically evolution has programmed us to to be happy or to be unhappy. I mean, that's it. Oh, no, I know you're not saying it quite as simply as that, but I don't know. How does that make you feel? I mean, for me, if that's the case, that that my viewpoint in the world doesn't really reflect the way the world is, if I can put it that way, doesn't reflect an ability for me to evaluate in some kind of objective or quasi-objective or intersubjective terms, doesn't allow me to make empirical kind of statements about the world. If it's all down to my D4DR gene doing the kind of problem seeking and finding things worth striving to achieve, if it's just that, then again, that for me, that sucks some of the value out of the process. It just reveals the evolutionary. It reveals my feelings of positivity. It reveals my feelings of occasionally loving life as a mechanism. The same kinds of mechanisms that makes me find poop mildly disgusting are also making me find this world mildly attractive. Do you know what I mean? It demonstrates the level of the programming more than anything else. And as I say, you can't say that that those people who see the world in dark colours are wrong and the people who see it in bright colours are right. I don't think you are saying that, but if you were, or if anybody was, that would clearly be false. Okay, pretty much all I've got to say, really. There's not one entity called life. Yeah, I would concur with that. You know, and we're not talking about all life, I don't think, are we? We're talking about sentient life, and not just sentient life, even right now, but sentient life capable of self-reflection. You know, capable of looking at the processes by which life has evolved, not come into being. We don't know how that worked exactly, but we are looking at the processes by which life evolved, by which different organisms evolved, and by which now human organisms have evolved, and how they're subsisting, and what kinds of reliances there are between humans and other organisms, and so on. And it's particularly sentient organisms I think we're interested in, as I say, and particularly the ones that are self-reflexive, because we are capable, at least partially, of recognising the difference between an evaluation based on certain criteria that we might set up, and an evaluation based on whether we find the world made of dark colours or bright colours, whether we personally just say that, I like it, I don't like it. You know, we are capable of not just saying the bright colour, dark colour thing, but saying, let's set some criteria by which we can measure these things. We might not have those criteria yet, but we can aspire towards that. I wouldn't want to put words in people's mouths here, but I'm guessing someone who is of the ethelist persuasion, or historically, you know, people like Schopenhauer and the history of that kind of end of philosophy. You know, these are people who have said, yes, well, I think we should be able to make an evaluation, as detached an evaluation as possible, and as I say, many people have found that to be negative. I'm guessing other people have found to be positive, but you know, that's the discussion, not whether we personally or not find the colours bright enough for our taste. Yes. And then there's a bit at the end about antinatalism. This isn't a video about antinatalism. So I'm not going to address directly what you say at the end. The only thing I would say there, this isn't directly connected as I say, is whether antinatalism is instituted or is favoured or not. What happens after you're natal, you know, I mean, time we spend on earth, those of us who are here, regardless of anybody, whether new people come in the world or not, that time that we have, the short span, is worth thinking about. And I would certainly want to optimise the experience of those of us who are here, regardless, as I say, if anybody else comes in. And you know, my personal interest in this kind of discussion isn't so much about the bit of it that you talk about, which is whether new life should be brought into the world or not. I'll leave that discussion for the folk, but my interest is in the good life. You know, how you go about maximising the capacity for enjoyment of life for all of us who are stuck here on island Earth. Not on an individual level, but for as I say, for all of us who are here, humans and animals alike. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I just want to go back very quickly to the thing you said at the beginning, which is about whether this is intelligent design or unintelligent design. Of course, there's no designer. We invoke a designer sometimes. Well, obviously, if we're religious, we invoke a designer for real. But some of us evoke a designer sometimes just as a kind of just as a way of thinking into the discussion. At least that's how I do it. And whether this is intelligent design or unintelligent design is an interesting question, regardless of whether there is a real designer or not, because of course there isn't. But the question then becomes, if there was a designer, would it be an intelligent designer, or would it be a compassionate designer? Because that tells us something about how we think the world is. You know, and I don't know about you, but you know, looking around at the world right now, you know, there is over 50% of the people on this planet right now are starving. And during the time I've made this video, a couple of hundred children have died. So we do know that. And the more the population goes up, which on the face of it sounds good, it does mean that 50% of people who are starving goes up as well. There's now, whatever it is, 3.5 billion people living below the poverty line are starving right now. It's hard to look at that figure and think, yes, if there was a designer, then that would be an intelligent, compassionate human being. I mean, we use this about that argument against religious folk all the time. If there was a God, what's he doing? Is this really how a God should have done it? And if we judge God like that, the God of religious folk, then we do have to kind of take responsibility for judging evolution like that. And I know you can't judge a process. I know I'm not anthropomorphizing evolution, but if you were evaluating a process, like you evaluate industrial processes, you know, if we were evaluating an industrial process, evolution as an industrial process, then I think we'd have to come to the same conclusions that we make when we make these judgments of a religious person's God. You know, no intelligent, compassionate, omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent designer would make a world like this. That's what we say. And so similarly, no well-optimized, ethical, industrial process would do that, surely. I know it has, you know, and we have to live with it, but I think that's one of the questions that are informing this process. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. Sorry for being incoherent, and well done for being so coherent yourself. Bye.